Hey everybody. See, I'm going to be making videos regularly again, and I mean it this time unless something comes up that I cannot foresee. But I don't see that happening. Probably. Anyway, this video is going to be more of a rant because it's something I thought about, and it's the appropriate time to do it wearing this shirt, which I'll explain. So it is going to be a political rant, but it's going to make sense. And everybody should watch it, particularly if you're a Democrat or on the left, because I'm going to lay down some truth bombs that we kind of have to fix. Us as in like spread this video. Somebody give it to Kyle Kalinske because he actually like has an audience for this stuff, and if he would see this video somehow, he would be like, yeah, because he's an INFJ too, and he can do this better than I can. But give him a little nudge, because it's important, and it's my channel. I'll rant if I want to. So something I've noticed about the Democratic Party that I've touched on in other videos. Yes, I'm not going to be doing political videos a lot. You know how I do, like every couple of months. But this is important. We have primaries not too far off. The Democratic Party claims to be diverse. But is it really? No. No, it's not. Now, you may think that I am wrong in this statement, but I'm going to explain. The Democratic Party is just like the Republican Party in that it's a good old boys club. Now, for those of you that don't know, the Democratic Party used to be the party of unions and teachers and lawyers and the working class. Party of civil rights, too. But then Reagan came on in the 80s, and Al Fromm had this idea that, I'm going to create this thing called the Democratic Leadership Council and move the Democratic Party from the left to the center. Basically turn the Democratic Party into moderate Republican. So the two main parties, so you have Republican and Republican light, conservative and center right. Conservative Republican and moderate Republican. And the Republicans are like, they move so far left. No, actually, they've been moving right, but also the Republicans have been moving right. You don't believe me? Look at the policies of George H.W. Bush, the old man, Bush 41, the one who was qualified to be president, who was the last moderate Republican. Look at his policies compared to his son, Trump, and all that. He was way more to the left than them. Hell, look how similar his were to Slick Willie's and Obama's. To give you a little comparison. Also, I'm gonna get off this part of the rant, but that whole Obamacare, that's socialism. No, it's corporatism, because what the government is doing is it is forcing you to buy insurance from the private market, the private for-profit market. It's corporatism, it's corporate welfare, because it's forcing you to buy in the private market. It is not, if it was socialized medicine, it would at the very least be state-run insurance, or as in the UK, it is state-run insurance and state-run facilities. We do have that in the US. It's called TRICARE. It's what the veterans have. Most of them like it at least better than the other stuff we have. But nonetheless, we didn't even get a public option. Why do I bring this up? Because to prove my little point that I was making. The individual mandate is what it's called. That was actually a Republican idea. Like that, what the hell's that place called? The big think tank that the Koch brothers fund. I can't think of the name. That was their idea. It was on Bob Dole's platform in 1996, and Romney, who railed against it, this is a good bit of Republican hypocrisy, implemented it on the state level when he was governor of Massachusetts, right? Hypocrite much, and why he was the flip-flopper. But to my main point, why is diversity a lie? Well, it's obvious, the Republicans are the party of angry old white men. They have their tokens. It's 2023, every good old boys club, old boys club have their tokens. But, the token knows they got to toe the company line. Being a token, you're not there to advance things. You're not there for your cause or for the cause of any marginalized group. No, you're there to toe the line of the good old boys and get yours. Right, Clarence Thomas? Prime example. But some would say, but the Democrats don't do that. No, actually they do. And we're going to talk more recent events. So the Democrats, they push identity politics and diversity, but not really, because what they want is corporatist, minority groups of different races and genders, gender identity, what have you, minorities of any kind. but only if that person's a corporatist, only if they'll toe the status quo DLC third way Clintonite line, that corrupt corporatist neoliberalism that they want to protect so much that they think people want, that people actually abhor, and they know the jig is up because they're bad liars like Pelosi. People, I don't think people want to change. They like where the party's at. Come on, status quo. Yeah, no, because they all got rich off of it. And because they're baby boomers, even though they're multi-millionaires, they still want more because they're never satisfied. It comes from their cocaine years, Cocaine good, want more cocaine. Cocaine good, want more cocaine. Never satisfied. More, me. I'm still in my prime. It's all about me. I know. Baby boomer politicians are the worst. But, there's always exceptions to the rules. Don't throw the exception. We're talking about the majority. Yeah. So, and I'll give my examples of why, when the Democrats scream, oh, but you got to support this person because it's historic and groundbreaking and glass ceiling. If they're pushing somebody, on the basis of, look, it's a woman, look, it's a woman of color, look, it's a man of color, look, it's a gay person. Know that person's actual policies, and if they've held, like national office, like we're in the Senate or the House, their voting record probably sucks, and they probably sided with the Republicans over 50% of the time. But they claim they're all about diversity, and these things are important. I'm not making light of that, but there are lots of people of unrepresented groups in high office that actually want like progressive change, and the party keeps them down because they want to keep the status quo above all else. And these, minorities who are corporatists are just being used as tokens, as pawns to be guilted, to have the facade, the veneer of progressivism. Like, oh, look, first time somebody from this minority is holding office, and they're going to do exactly what the old white baby boomer did before him because they're in the club. You want yours, right? Shut up and do what you're told. And groundbreaking change. Not really. I mean, look at Barack Obama. Look how excited he got everybody in 2008. It's how bad people wanted change. Things got that bad under President Cheney. I know Bush was technically president, but who was really running it? It's like if you watch Game of Thrones, it's like you think that angry little sociopath king was running things. No, his grandfather, who was his second in command, was. It's just like that. Bush was chilling, playing Guitar Hero. It was big at the time. Oh, star power. Oh yeah. Cheney was at the desk. Arrgh. Running the country, getting whatever you want. But in reality, there are actual reports from the White House that when aides would be like, Mr. President, referring to Bush, what do you think about this? What should we do in that situation? Quote, 9 times out of 10, Bush's reply was, run that by the vice president's office. Need I say who held the power? Yeah. Bush was, he was, yeah, never mind. I had a joke, but I'm not going to use it. But they do not speak of diversity at all when it comes to, they say it's so important to have these groups represented, and it is. And I'm saying it's important to support them when they're actually going to get the change you want. Because first and foremost, in politics, what's important is policy substance. I'll vote for anybody of any background, but they have to be a progressive, I'm not going to vote for somebody because they're a minority who never held that office, but they're going to do the same corporatist policies as status quo Joe or Bill Clinton, because there's no change. Like if you're going to do the same shitty neoliberal policies that have been failing for decades, but you're going to look different doing it, I don't, yeah. So I have examples. And more than one. So everybody knows AOC, woman of color, early Justice Democrat, as I was. I wasn't running for office, but I was involved in the movement in the early days. And I helped out big with the next county over from me where Jess King was running in Lancaster County. I was a big part of that campaign. But yeah, AOC, young Latina girl. comes from, well, she was originally working class and then her family became middle class. But regardless, she was primarying a corrupt corporatist named Joe Crowley, a true good old boy. Did the women in the Democratic Party, I'm talking the women in office, the women in Congress, the senators, support her? No, they supported Crowley. In fact, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's also corrupt, and that's been proven, that is by no means an opinion. She was investigated, and it proved she was leaking shit to the Clinton campaign. But she even spoke about how upset she was that she weren't, how much she liked Joe Crowley. Joe Crowley was an old white man who had been in office over 20 years, and his constituents hated him because he did nothing for them and did everything for his donors. But again, this was the same year as there's a special place in hell for women who don't support women. That was Madeleine Albright. She was in Slick Willie's cabinet. But that only applies to Hillary. Why? Because, well, Hillary's not only in the club, she was the queen of the fucking DLC. The ultimate establishment insider. You couldn't get more establishment status quo than Hillary Clinton, but they're like, great, this is perfect. Well, everything will stay as it is. Well, how the fuck are we going to sell her? She's not even likable. Woman. We'll just play that card. That's all she has. Well, we can at least get her to speak in a progressive tone like Obama did. Obama fooled them all. People thought they were getting another FDR. That's what they voted for. That's why, at the end of a recession, almost, or I'm sorry, at the beginning of a recession, almost a depression, people wanted change so bad that they voted for a black guy with a Muslim name, including many Republicans, because that's how bad they wanted progressive change, which he promised. But don't worry, we got old Barry to do what he was told. We'll just have Hillary do that. Well, that's not going to work. She's a terrible public speaker. People don't like her. She's not likable. She really isn't. So we'll just have to lay hard into this first woman thing. Don't worry, her only other opponent who's getting any traction, a lot of traction in the primaries of 2016 is Bernie Sanders. He's not in the club, and we'll just play the old white man card on him, and that he's old. But funny thing about that, yeah, Bernie Sanders, just another old white man. That's what they want you to think, just another old white man. But totally different in terms of his policy and his roughly, at that time, 30-year record in Congress reflects that. Like, Bernie's voting record reflects what he was running for in his campaign the whole time. He never sold out. Now, Hillary, on the other hand, then I'll prove the point I was in the middle of making. Hillary, on the other hand, it's like, oh yeah, one minute I'm so progressive, and the next minute, if I'm being called a centrist, I plead guilty. Yeah, talking out of both sides of your mouth, and it's like, what? You voted for the Iraq War, you voted for the Bush tax cuts, you were in favor of the crime bill, which we'll come back to. I know she wasn't in office at the time, and yes, it is fair to say, well, you can't hold Hillary accountable for things her husband did, because as First Lady, she really didn't have any official power. That is true. But what she can't get out of is her Senate record as a senator from New York. Those were her votes. She, rightfully has to answer for them. But nevertheless, Bernie Sanders, another old white man, and he's too old. He's just like all the other good old boys. We never want a good old boy again. We'll come back to that, too. But, turns out there is something different about Bernie Sanders. Yes, Hillary would have been the first female president. Bernie Sanders would have been the first Jewish president, but you never heard him say that. They're all about first, but never once did mainstream media mention, where they like, when we're either going to have they would always mention all the time, we could have the first woman president. They never mentioned the possibility of having a first Jewish president. So you all know what they did to Bernie to rig it for Hillary, and progressives were pissed, and progressives reached out to Hillary, and we knew how bad Trump was, and we were more than reasonable. We wanted her, because it was a really close primary, we wanted her to take on some of Bernie's platform. She absolutely refused, because queen of status quo. And then in a last-ditch effort, and this could have won her the election, if she at least gave us this. Okay, Hillary, and this is the common tactic. This is what, like, Reagan did in 80. Reagan was a far-right conservative, and he had to reach out to moderates, so he picked Bush Sr. as his VP. He was a moderate to unite the party. Hillary is she's a centrist corporatist all around. She is by no means a progressive Perhaps she was in the 90s, but her voting record in the Senate, not at all. So logically, she should have picked a progressive as her running mate in 2016. What does she do? No, I don't care. Progressives will fall in line. They have nowhere else to go. And that's basically what she said in a scolding tone. Like, all you young people, it's not about you. It's about people like me. Baby boomers. And my rich donors, of course. But that's a given in any party. Rich donors come first. And who else do we care about? Baby boomers. White baby boomers, really, for the most part. So I'm going to pick this white boomer male who's boring as hell, who somehow has less charisma than I do, and is to the right of me. He's basically a pro-choice Republican. I don't know, was he? I know he was. I can't remember if he was or wasn't. I know he was anti-union. He was right to work as a Democrat. Just be a Republican, dude. But he had that situation. See? They wanted the status quo. It was all about finding a way to keep the status quo, to guilt you into supporting the status quo. Again, another great example why I'm wearing this shirt. Tulsi Gabbard in 2020. I know she's gone off the rails, but this is who I supported in the 2020 primary. Before you judge me, remember, go back and look to what her platform was and the stuff she was saying back then. How the hell was I supposed to know what she was going to do 18 months later? We don't talk. So, people were pushing Kamala Harris because she's a corporatist through and through. It's like, oh, Steve Mnuchin, if you want to kick old ladies out of their houses illegally, as long as you contribute to my campaign, that's fine, So they pushed her, and people weren't buying it because she reeks of corporatism. People know of any background that she's only out for herself. It's all about her, just like Hillary. And she's basically the Gen X version. I know I've said it before. But that wasn't flying, and Bernie was getting traction again. It's like, we must unite the corporatists. We must stop Bernie Sanders. Liz, you stay in. You have to split his vote too. And Liz sold out and fell in line because we can't have Bernie Sanders. And Liz will promise we'll give you something. Not really, but, you're kind of naive. We'll get you to believe it. It's like, I'll keep the raunchy jokes out of this. So that happened. And all the corporatists fell in line. All the ones like Beto and Mayor Pete, all the other little corporatists were like, you promised me something. We're going to throw everything behind Biden. Now, mind you, this is the party. It's 2020 now. That 4 years earlier said we shouldn't have any more old white men. We're not going to be the good old boy party. And Bernie Sanders is too old. It's like, well, and he's just an old white man. But he's a Jew. He'd be the first Jew. It doesn't matter. Biden's the guy you got to rally behind. Yeah, he's demented. So you want change. Well, they don't really want change, but they want diversity and first. Ain't nothing first about Joe Biden. That is about as good old boy club as you can get. It's like he's not the first anything. He's an old white guy who's been in office since the 90s, who wrote the crime bill. Like, how sick is that? They try, and Biden himself did it, a party who's supposed to be, supporting change and minorities, guilt-tripped the black community into voting for the man who wrote the crime bill. The crime bill that Hillary Clinton wanted because young black men were super predators. Her words. But now this is the guy we got to have to beat Trump. Sure, he can't, string 3 sentences together and, or get through a debate without his teeth falling out. But this is our guy. Shut up and do what you're told, because boomers want status quo and they want one of theirs. Yes, Joe Biden, the forgotten Delaware senator, Delaware Dixiecrat senator who was rehabilitated by Barack Obama because being a black man, he needed to, who was progressive, and, he was running as a progressive at the time. During the 2008 campaign, it was believed he was progressive, so he needed a centrist, moderate establishment guy because he was a relatively new senator, so he picked Biden. Biden got rehabilitated because, what he did and other things too. But yeah, the guilt trip. And notice how the people with voices like celebrities who speak up in the general election, guilting us into voting for Biden because Trump's so bad. Where were their voices during the primary? How come they never speak up then? It's just like, oh, Republicans bad. It's like neoliberal corporatists bad too. Well, not, we only care about social issues because we're rich. All that other economic doesn't matter to us. We're going back to brunch. Shut up and vote. What vote for who you're told to. I don't listen to you. I don't care what any of you think over there, said the guy who just got back into modeling. I meant that. None of you have any sway over my decisions. At least nobody in America. But that's, what happened. So there were plenty of, Tulsi was shit on left and right by the establishment media and the Democratic establishment. They tried to prop up Kamala Harris. No one was buying it. But, Tulsi was getting some traction, and she actually had appeal to some people on the right as well. They would have voted for her over Trump. And Tulsi is not only a woman of color, but she's also a veteran. I think she was a major at the time still. She was a combat medic. I'm pretty sure her rank was major at the time because she's still in the reserves. And not only is she a woman of color and a veteran, but she's represents a minority religion too. She's Hindu. That she would have been like the first non-Christian president, unless you count, the founding fathers. Like Jefferson was a deist. Washington most likely was, but Jefferson was undeniably a deist. So, but no, they shit all over her. Well, it's like, I thought we need change and, woman of color. But it's like, oh, fuck, she's a progressive and a Gen Xer. We can't have that. No, it's like, we can have a little change. Like, instead of a white boomer male, we can have a white boomer female who was married to a white boomer male who was previously president. And it's going to do the exact same things he did because she's corrupt. And she is. Let's be honest with people. Let's rise above the Republicans and not be about tribalism. If somebody's corrupt, they're corrupt. I don't care if there's an R or a D by their name. And Hillary Clinton is definitely corrupt. Had to be said. So is Joe Biden, by the way. And demented. It would be madness to just fall in line. Who's the incumbent? Why? Why do we have to fall in line? RFK Jr. would do a much better job, as would Marianne Williamson. I think they should run together. I think RFK Jr. should be at the top of the ticket, not because he's the male, but because as intelligent as Marianne Williamson is, and I know she truly believes in what she says, to me she comes off of a bit of a pushover who can't hold her ground. And that's not because she's a chick, because the next person I'm going to mention, I really want to become president someday, and it is a woman, and it is a woman of color, and she got screwed over by the establishment too. And I, of course, am talking about the great Nina Turner, who ran for Congress as a progressive, and it looked like she was going to get in. What did the Democratic establishment do? Oh no, we can't have this fire-breathing progressive getting traction. We have to run somebody who will fall in line. It's like, oh, but it's a black woman. We got to be careful. If we're going to stick our thumb on it, it could look bad. I know. We'll get another black woman who will play ball. It's like, and that's exactly what they did. Nina Turner, who was a grassroots candidate who people were excited about, the establishment of the party is just like, look, generic black female, same thing, right? Same thing, vote the way we tell you. And that's what happened. Look what happened to AOC. They got her to fall in line. She sold out. And she's an ENFJ. They really struggle to say no. Someone should teach her. Dr. Cornel West should. He's an ENFJ, and he's no pushover. Or if you want to learn it from a woman, Amelia Clark learned how to stand up for herself. She's an ENFJ. So, it can be done. But yeah, that sadly is our Democratic Party. Their new thing is to stop progressive change and keep the corporatist status quo going. And they know people hate it now. They know people want change. They know, the majority of people hate it. And it's getting harder for them because, the people they care about, the boomers, they keep dying. And that's not going to stop. It's going to happen more and more and more as they get older. And younger people are going to keep coming of voting age. So the new game is, let's pretend, we're all about diversity and inclusion. Like Mayor Pete, he's a corporatist. He'll be one of them. It's like, we'll get people from different backgrounds who will keep doing the same shit we've been doing. But now we can guilt people into voting for them. And we must keep, It's like minority or progressives must be kept down, especially minority progressives, because if the progressives get a minority, and then we're really screwed, because then our best bet would be to run some old white guy with name recognition, and we'll never get away with that. So yeah, that's why we need somebody like Nina Turner in a high office. Things would change. But yes, do not fall in line. Do not fall for the traps of the Democratic Party. They are just as much of a good old boys club as the Republicans. Are their policies, the establishment Democrats, better than the establishment Republicans? Yes, but that doesn't make them good. A D is better than an F. But it is a club, and they protect their. And this is another thing that blows my mind. The Democratic establishment club is like the only untouchable club. Like, I support the Me Too movement. I told everybody about my story, what happened to my friend in 2006 when we were models, and how I had to beat the guy up, and how, I got retaliation for that, because nobody talked about that shit in 2006, especially if you were unknowns. But, I support Me Too, and they do go after some powerful people. But I noticed one guy who's a repeat offender who's been given a pass, and that's Bill Clinton. And people have spoken out about Bill Clinton since the 90s. Hell, there must be, I don't know exactly if he's guilty, but Paula Jones had enough evidence in the 90s while he was the sitting president to warrant an indictment and a deposition. And as someone who has sued Arlington County, a powerful, rich county, it takes a lot of evidence that could convince a court that it's like, okay, you little nobody, you can drag him in the court. You have enough to warrant having a case. So there's written depositions from that. It's not just her word. People were deposed, and they settled out of court. But that's what I mean. There are records. It's not just her accusation, but yet nobody holds him accountable for that. And his not countless, but there's a handful of other accusers of Bill Clinton. Some sound more believable than others, but still, what are the odds that all of them are lying? Pretty damn slim. Is it quite possible that of the 6 or 7 that one of them's making it up? Yeah, rule of probability, it's pretty. And the Lewinsky thing, we know that happened. Now, granted, that was consensual, but there was that power dynamic. But he's never had to answer for that. Why does he get a pass? Other guys, did much less. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that they should have got away with it. I'm saying, what's with the double standard? I don't like double standards, and the feminists I know don't like double standards, especially the female witches I know that are also, Lilithans. They really don't like it. But why him? And same, there was an accuser of Joe Biden too, and that was swept under the rug because he's in the club. And that really bothers me too, because what I'm for, personally, I want to destroy the good old boys club. I don't want a seat in it. I don't want it reformed. I don't want half of it to be, spots for diverse people. I want the whole thing destroyed, because I grew up in an area, in a culture that basically functions like the House of Lords, where everything is hereditary. Around where I live, if you want to be a cop, the most important thing you can do is have a dad who's a cop. Everything here is corruption and nepotism and cronyism, and defended. I know all those things exist everywhere else, but they're not celebrated. When it's exposed, it's changed because they can't justify it in the real world, in the normal world. Same as this. Same as what's going on, in the Democratic Party. If people start talking about this, calling politicians out, like the leaders of the party, about this, they'll know the jig's up, and they'll still do shenanigans behind the scenes. Let's not kid ourselves. But then, with being called out, it'll wake up the people who don't really pay attention, and then we might actually have a shot of getting some actual progressives in. Or our best bet might be third party at this point. But I'll tell you this much, I'm very political. In no way in hell I'm voting for a baby boomer supremacist. And that's what Joe Biden is. on top of everything else. He has no empathy for younger generations. He said it himself on live television. It's not, a reporter misconstruing his words. You can see him, hear him. He said it, and then he doubled down on it. So, that's just my personal boundary. I can't vote for a baby boomer supremacist, especially one who's demented.